Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined as always by Dakota Lasky. Dak, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm not doing too bad, man. I have, as you know, and as some others know, and I believe you also have as well, I have received my first dose of the COVID vaccine. I'm a Moderna man, so
Yes.
I'm looking forward to being fully vaccinated within the coming weeks. But yeah, that's all I've got really going on. Just I got that vaccine. My arm is no longer sore. It's a couple days of some shoulder soreness, but otherwise I was pretty fine. And you know, the weather is getting nicer, so I had to get a bunch of allergy medicine because it's that time of year. And yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Andy, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm like perma allergic to everything because I'm allergic to my cat and my dog, so like seasons just blend together. But I also got the Moderna. We called ourselves the Omega Moderna faction here because I think you, me, and Doom all got the Moderna here. But yeah, that Metroid Fusion virus joke or meme or whatever, that cracked me up. I had a good chuckle at that. So you love to see it. My arm actually didn't hurt right away, but then the next day, so would have been last night, was killing me. But today is once again fine. So yeah, happy to see that you got your shot, and you know, good things hopefully on the horizon.
Yeah, definitely. You know, yeah, it wasn't super sore. It was like a little bit of soreness, mostly in my shoulder, upper arm, and then better yesterday, and I barely feel it now. So, it was funny though because I didn't know like which part of the vaccine, like which dosage is supposed to make you like feel sick or whatever. I thought it was the first one, but then the doctor or nurse or whoever who gave me the shot, she was like, yeah, it's actually the second one. I bought a bunch of snacks though, and like comfort food and whatnot, and like soup for the weekend because I thought I was gonna feel like trash. But then all I had was like a kind of sore shoulder. So like I'm just sitting there feeling fine, eating all this junk food, which isn't a big deal. But you know, I guess I'm ready for the next dose in a month at least for me. And apparently that one's a little worse, so I will be more mentally prepared for that one.
Yeah, I heard the same thing, that the second one is the killer. If figuratively speaking, it makes you feel sicker than the first one did. But yeah, that's good stuff. Before we get going here, I want to give a shout out to a reminder, I guess rather, to everyone that if you are a Metroid artist, a cosplayer, a writer, whatever, if you make something and you're interested in contributing to the Metroid 35 zine, then hit up our pal Metroid35 over on Twitter and get in on that action. I just wrote the foreword for the zine actually, so I'm excited about that. So I think that it'll be really cool, and we're, you know, she's still looking for participants and artists and stuff like that. So if that's you, I once again just encourage you to get in there and contribute and really celebrate this milestone, because you know this milestone, Metroid making it to 35 years, belongs to the fans. It doesn't belong to Nintendo. You know, it made it there in spite of Nintendo. So I really, you know, I just want to put that out there. If you're at all interested, it's a cool idea, cool cause. So see if you can get in on that action at Metroid35 over on Twitter.
And you know, I'll know I've made it when I officially write a forward for a Metroid-related media or whatever. I didn't know that you were writing forwards, but I'm looking forward to reading that.
I stumbled my way through it. I think it turned out okay. Well, we asked you guys last week, as you all know, we started our own Discord server at Omega Metroid Discord, and we asked you guys to give us some Metroid questions, and you guys delivered. We have a plethora of questions to get through here, tons of questions, way more than I thought we were going to get, actually, so I feel like we have no time to waste at all here. So, Dak, let's just jump right into it. Are you ready?
Yeah, I guess I'm as ready as I guess I can be. I don't know. I don't sound very ready, but I'm ready. We got a bunch of questions. Went through them quickly beforehand. Glanced at a few, but I guess I'll let you run through these, and I don't know if we'll get to all of them, but we'll do our best to get to as many of these as we can on this episode.
Yes. All right, so here's a softball for you to start. Doominal, and just let it be known, we kind of grouped these by user, so we'll try and, like Dak said, we'll get to everybody here. Doominal asks, why does Andy have so many wrong opinions about Metroid Fusion? He is not the only one that thinks that, is he?
Yeah, I was very happy to see that a lot of people agreed with my opinions because it just made me feel good inside. But I don't think you were wrong in anything you said last week, right? Like, you just had different expectations for, based on Super Metroid, which I think is more than fine and fair. It's a different kind of game. And I think that still doesn't make it, not a good game necessarily, but it's a different kind of game. I obviously love it. You love, other stuff a little bit more. I think that is what it is what it is. But, I don't remember what your opinion on the fusion suit was, but I know that's definitely a wrong opinion because I don't think you love it as much as I do.
I don't love it. Well, that's not true. I like it. I would even say I like it a lot, but it's not my favorite.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, but it's different, which I like. I set myself up here because I used a little bit of creative license, maybe borderline clickbaity wording when I was tweeting last week's episode, and I was like, is Metroid Fusion one of the best or one of the worst? I mean, obviously it's not one of the worst. Come on. But,
Yeah, I didn't write that,
in.
everybody. When those podcast tweets come out, that's not me writing. The cool, fun tweets, that's your boy.
Yeah, they're calling the creative license ones. Those are me. It is what it is. I'm glad that everybody liked that episode, though. It seemed to get a lot of positive feedback, and I can't wait to do another definitive ranking. Doom asks another question, which I don't know that we've ever told the story here on the podcast before. Doom asks, how did both of you meet, and what gave you the idea to team up and make this podcast?
I don't remember.
So I'm going to recall, and you can chip in here. But
okay.
So as a lot of you guys know, I also work at Zelda Dungeon, and I host a Zelda podcast called the Champions Cast. And way back when, I had an idea, and I was like, it would be sweet if I could round up a Zelda podcast and a Pokemon podcast and a Metroid podcast and a Animal Crossing, whatever, all these different podcasts, and make one little Nintendo bubble. Right. And so I kind of started looking for a Metroid podcast because that's where I wanted to start, because that's my favorite franchise, tied with Zelda. So I quickly discovered that there wasn't really a Metroid podcast. Shine Sparkers had a thing that they did, I think, very, very, very sporadically. But there really wasn't a Metroid podcast, so I was like, well, I should just make one. So I think I went over into either the Metroid database or the Metroid 35 or Metroid fans, whatever it's called, Discord server. And I think I was just like, hey, does anyone want to start a Metroid podcast? And Dak was the first person that messaged me. And then we got together and we started talking, and then, the rest was history.
Yeah, I think obviously I can't speak to the parts before I showed up in that story because that wasn't my perspective. I haven't lived your life, but I think it was the Metroid community Discord that you posted in. I just happened to be on the Discord, and I was like, oh, so I've always wanted to talk about Metroid, and I don't know if I would say I've always wanted to do a Metroid podcast, but it's something that when I saw the idea, I was like, oh, that'd be awesome. And I've done podcasts before. I did a Super Smash Brothers podcast called Directional Influence. If any of you have ever heard about the podcast, I was way back when, 2010 to 2012, I think. That's when I ran that. And high school and college, it was a Brawl, Super Smash Brothers, mostly Brawl competitive podcast. I did that for a little while, and then, I went into more commentary and esports and stuff like that. I hadn't done a podcast in a while. So, when I saw you post that on the Discord, I just happened to see it. I was like, oh, a podcast, that'd be cool. I'd love to talk about Metroid. And, yeah, we kind of just started chatting. And that was really it. It was pretty simple.
Yep. So history was made right there. And I don't know, man, you talk about Zelda for 2 years straight, and I love Zelda, but I was like, man, I wish I could just talk about Metroid. And so I'm glad that I didn't find anyone else that had already done a Metroid podcast, because I love doing this show. So yeah, that's how it came together, Doom. So let's keep going. Doom asks, who is a guest that you would love to have on the show in the future, and what would you like to talk about with them? What do you think, Dak? I have a few general answers here.
I don't really have anybody, I guess, specifically. I would. Well, first of all, I would if they're okay. So back when we did the Dread episode, the Metroid Dread episode, the history of Metroid Dread, if that prototype was really shown at Nintendo of America or to Nintendo of America employees back in 2009, 2010, whatever it was, and people actually saw that, I want someone who saw it. I want an eyewitness on this show, and I want to talk to them about that viewing if it actually happened. Aside from that, I'd be really interested in interviewing someone who just like worked at Retro Studios. I think it'd just be really interesting to have someone on who's actually worked on the games that we talk about so often. And, if we could get someone who was on a development team of 2D Metroid too, that'd be great. But I feel like, considering Retro Studios in the United States, it'd probably be more likely, or in North America. But yeah, so I don't know. I didn't really think of anyone specific, but I'd love to talk to someone from Retro, whoever, if anyone saw that Dread prototype. Those would probably be my picks.
Yeah, totally. Mine was the same. Kind of like I'd love to interview anyone involved with Dread and just try and pick their brain. And I also would love to interview. I was frantically Googling his name because it escapes me here, and I haven't quite found it yet. But the CEO of Retro Studios that was like coming in with his cars and like he laid everybody off. His name is escaping me, and I'm apologizing for that. But I think maybe other than that, I don't know. I think like talking to Tom Happ would be cool, the developer of Axiom Verge. I think that Dr. N64 would be cool, talking about AM2R. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like most of the times, I'm a fan of actually not having guests, typically speaking, unless it's like a really, really cool guest that kind of warrants coming on the show, or like a really good friend of the show. So yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, if we could also get like, I don't know, The Rock, RVD, Booker T, Stone Cold Steve Austin, those would be cool guests. I'm down.
Yeah.
If they're Metroid fans. I wonder if there are any any wrestlers, any pro wrestlers that are big Metroid fans that would want to come on the show and talk about Metroid with us. That would be cool. I'm not sure I don't think I've ever seen a wrestler like explicitly say that they like Metroid or enjoy it or have played it. So, but if you're out there, come join us.
You know what? There is a cool indie wrestler called Logan Lynch, and I think he's just starting his career. But we've DM'd a couple times here and there. He's a big fan of Zelda, so if anyone is going to be a fan of Metroid, it's probably him. Check him out. He's at Weapon Next over on Twitter. He had a match against John Morrison. Actually, I watched it. It was pretty good.
Damn, that's awesome. Did he go over? Did he go
no,
over
no,
Johnny Nitro?
No, he put John over. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Well, once COVID's over, I'm trying to have a match myself, so I can say that I'm the wrestler who likes Metroid. So eventually, I'll be able to answer that with my own name, but not just yet. Not just yet. I haven't learned how to take a bump yet, and I haven't learned how to do a Canadian Destroyer or have someone help me do it, like J-Mo did.
Well, yeah, if Bad Bunny can do it, I think that you can do it. All right, last question from Doom. What is your favorite Metroid meme or in joke? I don't know. I don't know that I like memes and I like them when I see them, but I don't like save memes to my phone. I'm just like, haha, that's funny, and I'll like retweet it or something. I like the Metroid meme Twitter page is like very funny. I think Metroid memes, like some of the ones that you've created, Dak, where like all these Nintendo franchises are playing in the sun, and then there's Metroid in the dark. I don't know. I think those are funny, but nothing. I don't know. Nothing comes to my mind off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm definitely the person who saves memes to their phone, computer. You got to have a healthy, plentiful database of memes and reactions for any kind of situation. But I would say, I don't know, my favorite meme or in joke, it'd probably have to be, I don't know if it's like Metroid specific, but like, back before Ridley was in Smash, like that Ridley was too big. That's probably my favorite now because now he's in the game. So like everyone that said he was too big or shouldn't be in Smash, like, had to eat that. And that just makes it very satisfying for me. So like looking back on it now, like looking back at all like the Ridley's too big, you'll never be in Smash stuff, which was like a big part of like Smash speculation for years. Like looking back on all that stuff now and being able to just like satisfyingly, laugh at it and feel vindicated That probably makes it my favorite.
Oh, there you go. So we have like a million questions from Big Griff, aka the Accursed Hunter. So I'm gonna skip for him for now, and we'll get back to him later, just to give some of these other guys a shot here. So let's go over to Chris06. Chris asks, how much of an impact do you believe COVID-19 had on the development of Metroid Prime 4? Will this game ever see the light of day?
I
So
hope so.
it will. I think it will. I think it's a fair question to ask, though. Will it see the light of day on the Switch, or like the next Switch, or the Switch Pro, or whatever? Like, you might have to buy a new console to play Metroid Prime 4. I don't think that that's like, an impossible scenario. And I think it's probably fair to say that COVID-19 had an impact on every game in development everywhere. Pretty much, from development teams having to work from home, or from the simple logistics of like packaging and whatnot and shipping. I think that it played a huge role. Did it delay Metroid Prime 4 even more so specifically? I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's really no way for us to know. I'm sure it had some kind of significant impact, especially because, as far as I know, Retro Studios is in Texas, which hasn't been exactly the best in terms of like COVID, like following COVID regulations and whatnot. And I mean, even like when there were the major storms recently, right? Like the whole power grid in Texas went off. Like I'm sure that had an impact on Metroid. Like imagine something got screwed up in the Metroid Prime 4 development because of the power grid going off for a day or two, like a month or so ago back in Texas. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of significant impact. I would, like you said, every major game studio, every major company in the world, I would say, had their workflows, their processes, everything about what they do affected. For game development, which certainly relies on not only a lot of, I mean, computing power, but working both on your computers, but in person too. Like it's not just programming as well. Like I'm sure COVID held up a lot of what they wanted to do with any kind of game. So yeah, I definitely think it didn't help, and the fact that they restarted development even before that, I'm sure that wasn't helpful either. But there's really no way to know. But yeah, definitely, I would assume it had some kind of impact and probably even delayed the game a little bit.
Yep. Fair. All right, let's keep it going. Papa Rick is here with a couple cool questions. His first one is: do you believe, or do you both think a crossover of Castlevania and Metroid could work? Do you think it could ever happen? The real Metroidvania. So this is like a cool idea. Getting the like true Metroidvania together, and you know what? I feel like anything can work if you go in with the right tone and it's not super serious, or like I don't know, if anything can work if you do it well. That being said, it is these are two series that don't really have a lot of similar DNA, if you will, aside from the gameplay, of course. One's a sci-fi space epic where you're shooting aliens, and one is a gothic vampire tale where you are battling monsters. So on the surface, I mean, I'd never say never, but this one might be a little bit more tricky to pull off rather than something like F-Zero in Metroid, which could be pretty easy. But I mean, hey, you never say never, and if it happened, I'd be like, hell yeah.
See, I think this would work really easily because I feel like, and I saw a lot of people say the exact same thing you just said, like, oh, I can't see the sci-fi stuff mixed with like the gothic look, which is odd to me because I feel like that aesthetic, I see it mixed all the time. I mean, even Doom, the recent Doom games mixes that up, has that kind of gothic sci-fi look to it, and you're in a sci-fi scenario essentially battling monsters and demons, which are Castlevania has like demons and vampire, essentially the same thing. I can 100% see these things mixed up in like a serious manner too, and and a lot of the times, I think when we think of these crossovers, like, oh, if it's not serious, that'd be fine. But this, I could see it as like a serious story. Maybe somehow ends up in this area, and the two like Samus is fighting in this kind of like weird demonic like Castlevania look. I don't know too much about Castlevania lore, or maybe like Simon and Richter because they're cool new Smash characters recently. Like maybe you could fight as like or play as both like a Castlevania character and as a Metroid character in like the game, and like they'd have slight differences based on the games they come from. But like story wise and aesthetically, because I don't know the gameplay would work really. I really do think they would work easily. Like the gothic and sci-fi aesthetic work fine together, and I would say like any sufficient amount of sci-fi is indistinguishable from magic, right? That's the saying. So I think that would work perfectly with like Castlevania, where you could like have some of the stuff that might not be explainable in like a Castlevania world coming from Metroid. You could be like, oh, it's this crazy like magical stuff. They might not understand it. And Samus is dealing with some demonic sorcery that she hasn't dealt with before. I don't know. I think I could definitely see that happening. Castlevania and Metroid. That'd be a really cool mix-up, and I could see them doing it in like a serious manner. That'd be cool.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, you sold me. I think that it probably isn't as much of a stretch as I made it seem to be. I mean, plus like some of the Sorrow games in Castlevania, like they take place in the future anyways. So there's
Yeah.
stuff like guns and there's lasers and whatever. So yeah, I don't know. Why not? That could work. Papa Rick is back. He asks, can the Metroid 3D games still be considered a Metroidvania type of game, or are they just first-person shooter games? Oof. Well, I am always of the opinion that of course they're Metroidvania games. You have the same principles as the 2D Metroid games, where your main objective is exploration, and your main objectives are to find items that will allow you to further traverse and peel back the layers of the world. I think that that's really at the core of what makes a Metroidvania game, at least in my eyes. Are these a first person shooter game? We've talked about this before on the show. I think in the traditional accepted version of a first person shooter, or what everybody associates with a first person shooter, I wouldn't say that they are. I mean, you're playing in first person, you're shooting things, there's no doubt about that. But it doesn't share a lot of similar qualities. But first-person shooters have also evolved a lot in the last 20 years since Metroid Prime came out. So, who's to say? I mean, I think the answer is probably both.
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone really. I mean, they're clearly not just FPS games, right? Like, they're not a traditional FPS. There's more going on there, or less going on, depending on how you look at it. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, they're not just an FPS game. Yeah, they're Metroidvania, because right, like a big element of Metroid Prime is that have access to areas, but you only have a limited access to those areas until you unlock more upgrades and beat certain things to unlock certain objectives, so you can expand the areas that you've already somewhat become familiar with earlier in the game. So that aspect of Metroidvania games is definitely still prevalent in Metroid Prime 1 and 2, and even in Metroid Prime 3, even if that is a little bit more linear. But yeah, so I would say that they're not just an FPS game, because even if we're putting aside the Metroidvania aspect, they're not just an FPS game, because as you said, they are more, they're like not as combat oriented and more about platforming and exploration and whatnot. Still doesn't mean it's not an FPS game, but it's not what a traditional FPS game, like you said, or more action based or combat focused one. But yeah, I think that's like they go hand in hand. It is an FPS game. It's also a Metroidvania game. That's just like the type of FPS it is. It's FPS with Metroidvania elements. I don't think like it being a 2D game, right, is necessarily like a requirement for a Metroidvania.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. I'm playing a great 3D Metroidvania game right now for the first time, as a matter of fact. So there you go. Rick's last question here is, do you think there is a possibility that an online multiplayer battle mode would exist in Metroid Prime 4? Would that make it Nintendo's Halo? Dak, Halo's near and dear to you. You take the lead on this one, and I'll follow.
Do I think there's a possibility of an online multiplayer battle mode? Yeah, definitely. We've discussed this many times on the show. Whether there will be a multiplayer mode, whether it should have one, whether it should be released separately, maybe as like another Metroid Prime Hunters thing, or if it should be maybe more like the Metroid Prime 2 multiplayer. We've gone on and on about that. Personally, yeah, I definitely think there's a big possibility for an online multiplayer mode. Nintendo's clearly aware of the replay value that multiplayer has for any kind of game, and certainly that would bring a lot of replay value to Metroid if it had like a fully fleshed out multiplayer battle mode. Would that make it Nintendo's Halo? I mean, it depends on what your definition of that is, because it'll never.
Yeah, like what does that mean?
Well, because like if you're saying like in terms of just basically being a multiplayer sci-fi FPS, yeah, it would I guess be Nintendo's Halo in that way. But Nintendo's never going to push Metroid like like Microsoft would Halo, and Halo is also like a way bigger endeavor. But it's also the reason why I think Metroid Prime 4 could have like both a really good campaign and a really good multiplayer because Halo does it. But at the same time, Halo's multiplayers are a lot shorter. They're more linear than like a Metroid Prime is. So I don't know if it would like be the equivalent of like a Halo game because Halo has just like it's so much of a larger package overall. It's way more multiplayer focused, even just outside like a battle arena. Like you can create maps, you can watch theater mode, you can do all sorts of there's firefight, there's co-op, there's all it's a way different kind of game. So even in that way, I still think Metroid at the end of the day is going to be single player focused, which I think is fine and it should be because that's what Metroid is.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it would be Nintendo's Halo, no matter whether Metroid or multiplayer to it or not. Could it be? Maybe. I don't think it necessarily has to be. And to be honest, I can just go and play Halo if I really want to. But I guess it depends on your perspective on what makes a game like Microsoft. Like Halo is Microsoft's Mario. Like that's their big game, other than like Minecraft. Like that's their big game. Like that's their Mario game. That's their Pokemon. That's their Zelda. So like the comparison, like in terms of how the companies treat those franchises respectively, is way different. Metroid would never, or Nintendo would never give Metroid like the care and funds and all of that that Microsoft gives to Halo. Never in a million years. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think they would ever really be Nintendo's Halo, but it would still be its own cool thing, which I think is fine.
Yeah, and so I agree with actually everything you just said. Really quickly, is there a possibility that online multiplayer could happen? Without commenting on whether it should happen or not, I think, yeah, there is a possibility. But yeah, that stuck out to me. Like, would it make it Nintendo's Halo? And to me, I think like 20 years ago, or like maybe even 15 years ago, like Halo was the undisputed king of multiplayer. Like that was
Yep.
that was the game. That was the franchise. And I think that Halo's lost a lot of that luster in the last 10 years. Like, if you're talking about the king of multiplayer, like, it's not Halo
Yeah,
anymore.
definitely.
I don't think, right? Like, so
Not even
what does that
close.
mean? Like, obviously, Halo is still a giant series, and, like, it has a massive fan base and a dedicated fan base. But if, to me, that kind of implies, like, okay, this is going to be the game that Nintendo really, like, sells its multiplayer around. And I think that game is Smash for Nintendo. I don't think
Yeah.
it's going to be Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah, I mean, and you're definitely on
So,
point. And even with all I said, I mean, there hasn't been a new Halo game in 6 years. I think like Halo 5, even though it's sold pretty well, has like the lowest multiplayer population of any Halo game. Like it has fallen off almost as much as Metroid has. And in a way, they're very like they're connected in a way because they're both not in the best of parts of their lifespans at the moment. But yeah, I think like the whole Metroid being Nintendo's Halo thing is a remnant of like the 2000s, right? When Halo was the big multiplayer game and it was the obvious direct comparison to Metroid and vice versa. Now there are so many other IPs, so many other different kinds of games that are way different and bigger than Halo and Metroid combined. Like it's I mean Halo's still a huge franchise, don't get me wrong, but yeah,
yeah.
the landscape of gaming has completely changed since, Halo 2, Halo 3, the peak of those games. So, I don't know if at that point does like I don't know if it's even like a discussion that needs to be made at this point. I just want Metroid Prime 4 to be good. I really think that adding a multiplayer aspect would give the game more longevity and bring more people in to play it. But at the same time, I still think at the end of the day, they'll likely and should focus on like the campaign. So that'll likely affect how the product comes out.
There we go. All right, let's move on. Fastball 1818. Shout out to Fastball. Thanks for coming and joining our server from the Zelda Dungeon side of things. He asks, of all the games inspired by Metroid you've ever played, which are your all-time favorites? So, some of my all-time favorite Metroidvanias are actually just like straight-up Castlevania games, like obviously Symphony of the Night, Aria of Sorrow, but I'm gonna disqualify those from answering this because those are like Vania in Metroidvania. So I would say Ori and the Blind Forest obviously is just a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best games ever made. Axiom Verge is awesome. Hollow Knight is awesome. Let's see. Those three definitely stick out to me if I'm excluding Castlevania games. Yeah, I would say those three are like my trinity of games that I really love. I'm sure I'm probably forgetting a ton, but what do you think, Dak?
Uh, I mean, I'm gonna definitely agree with you. With Ori, I, obviously, like that's a go-to Metrovania pick. I still really like Guacamelee, man. I know it didn't resonate as much with you, but I really enjoyed Guacamelee. I still haven't played Guacamelee 2, but I did buy it and download it, so I have to get to playing that. But those are the ones that really stick out to me the most. I definitely enjoyed Axiom Verge a lot as well. And then I guess if we're gonna be, because we did cover this in Inspired by Metroid, but if you're gonna count like Arkham Asylum, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, true, true.
like if we're counting those, I mean, I really like those games, and those are some of like just some of the best like adventure games too, like of like the 2000s, 2010s, whenever.
And
Um,
it's funny actually because I played Arkham City after we were done playing Arkham Asylum, and I would not say that that game is a Metroidvania. That's just like your standard open world fare. But man, Arkham Asylum was like such a wicked Metroidvania. Here's one. Here's one for a 3D Metroidvania. Resident Evil 2 and frankly Resident Evil 1. They're the exact same formula as Metroid games where you explore, you get an item, it helps you progress somewhere else in the map. So yeah, awesome. Those games for sure.
yeah.
Okay, well let's keep it going here. Spyco03 has a really great question. What's a good jumping off point for someone new to the Metroid series? So I think that there's three appropriate answers for this deck. What say you?
So I guess like if someone's asking like if they've never played Metroid like before, I really just say like you should just play Zero Mission and Metroid Prime. Um, Zero Mission I think is the probably the best game to start off with for Metroid because it's chronologically the first game in the series. It's a really good remake of the original game, so you don't have to play that. It gives you pretty much all like the backstory you need for Metroid, like that's relevant to the rest of the story. And it's a solid like 2D game in terms of it's not like super floaty and sometimes it feels a little clunky in Super Metroid, but it's like a solid, concise experience while still not like being too linear compared to like Fusion. And then obviously takes place before Fusion 2, even though like you're not, no one's gonna get confused by the Metroid story. But I think like giving someone the chronologically last game in the series, I think is just morally inconsiderable. But yeah, I Zero Mission for 2D, and then I would just say like just play Metroid Prime for 3D. But I honestly, even then, I still recommend people to play Zero Mission first. I think Zero like to play a 2D Metroid before you play Metroid Prime because I think you'd end up appreciating Metroid Prime more after playing 2D Metroids, because I did. Though I guess I played them both at the same time when I first started playing, so that's not true. But yeah, I still think Zero Mission's like the best entry of the series, both like for gameplay overall and then the backstory, and then play Metroid Prime on Dolphin mouse and keyboard, or the original way.
Yeah, I think the appropriate three answers are Metroid Prime, obvious reasons, Metroid Zero Mission for obvious reasons, or Super Metroid for more practical reasons, where like Super Metroid is just very readily available on
True.
all consoles, and if you I feel like you could debate starting with Metroid Zero Mission or Super Metroid. I feel like if you want to ease your way into Metroid, Zero Mission is definitely the way to go. If you just want to get right into the thick of it and experience getting lost in Metroid, Super Metroid is a great starting off point. But yeah, I think all three of those could be appropriate.
I agree.
All right, well let's keep it moving here. Dracona Quest has a cool question. How would you feel about a Metroid game that was narrative-driven third-person shooter slash platformer, akin to games like the Tomb Raider reboots and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order?
Yeah.
So I have a great comeback to this. We had that. It was called Metroid Other M.
No, it wasn't. That wasn't Other M. That's what Other M should have been. Those games like that's Other M tried to do that. I don't even know if it tried to do that, but it's like a horrible not version of those kinds of games. But that's what Other M should have been.
It was the same idea. It was just really
I wouldn't
bad.
even say it was the same
love it.
idea. Like it's somewhat similar, but yeah, it was.
Well, what's different about it? It's narrative driven. It's a third person shooter slash
It's not really
platformer.
third person though. It's not true third person in the way that Tomb Raider or like Star Wars or God of War or even like Gears of War is actual third person. To Other M is not real like third. It's like third person, yes, literally, but how it plays is not like a third person game like this, which is what they're insinuating. So it's
Unfortunately, it doesn't play like a 2D game either.
it doesn't. It doesn't play like any game because it's a crappy game. It's an awful game. I wrong episode, but yeah, I would love this. This is exactly what Other M should have been. This is
Yeah.
what Sam. I would love a game like this, or even like like a cover-based third-person shooter like Gears of War. I think would be great too. But I'm also down for a more open third-person platformery adventure kind of game like Star Wars or the Tomb Raider games. I think Metroid would be perfect for that. I wish they would try more stuff with Metroid and do a game like that because it would be perfect. Like all the different upgrades would be great for that kind of environment. Uh, yeah, this would be awesome. I would absolutely love something like this.
Yep. Yeah, I think it would be cool. Man, I'm always game for more Metroid titles in different
Yeah,
genres and
seriously,
stuff
give
like
us more
that.
Metroid game. Like anytime
Yeah.
it's like, do you want this kind of Metroid game? Most likely gonna say yes because
Sure.
there's like 5 of them.
Yeah.
Like I want some more.
Um, all right, let's keep it moving here. Rising Blue Phoenix asks, how do you feel about the various designs that Samus has gone through in both her iconic power suits and zero suits? So, Mr. Phoenix, we actually have an episode where we power ranked all of Samus's suits. And I think that the answer to your question is going to lie in there, so you should definitely check that out. I don't think that we really talked about the zero suit very much though, and frankly, I guess there is different designs of the zero suit, but they all pretty much look the same to me. The only one that really sticks out is like the Smash Bros version where she has like the high heels that are guns or whatever.
Yeah, they're like
That's the only different one I can think of.
yeah. I don't really think there's too many differences in like the zero suit really. Though I guess maybe they mean like the fusion versions. Like the end game screens kind of have like the 2-piece outfits. That's
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
okay.
considered the zero suit. I don't know. Maybe that's not what they mean. But yeah, we had an episode talking about like how we feel specifically about all of them, but overall, I really love that Samus changes her look all the time because like you can still tell it's her, and she still has like that iconic look, like whether she's like in her regular power suit or like in the Varia or she's in the fusion suit, she still has a very distinctive silhouette and build. So I love that really translates really well across many different kinds of suits. And then you go into like Prime 2 and Prime 3, which like really get more abstract with her suit design. And then obviously you have like Metroid Fusion, which goes like in the complete other direction, goes like Batman Beyond on the suit, which I love. That's one of the things I really love about Fusion and the other Metroid games, like Metroid Prime as well, is that yeah, they do get creative with how Samus looks, and she's she kind of like she's kind of like adapting to her environment over time, right? Which is perfect for her kind of character because that's what she kind of needs to be. So yeah, I love that her look changes over time. For some characters, I think it's fine. Like going back to Halo, for me, Master Chief, he just kind of I like when he just kind of looks the same. He's just big green guy, and that's how it works. But for Samus, I really like how her look changes over time, even in minute details. Like when you go from like Prime 1 and Prime 2, there are slight differences in the suit and like the visor notch and the neck, the collarbone area, and all of that. Like those differences make it are significant as well. I like how her suit changes over time. It's really cool. Makes her feel like a more dynamic character, and it also shows that she's really adaptable and constantly changing to kind of overcome her challenges. And I'm a big fan of all the different suits that she gets. All her different looks look really cool as well. They have really cool designs. Huge fan of the fusion suit and others. So I love that about Samus.
Yeah, yeah, that very well put. I don't think I could say it better. All right, let's move on to the questions from Quaid.
Quaid.
Shout out to you, Quaid. He asks if you guys can remember what was your first reaction like to the SAX reveal, as well as every other time SAX appeared in your first playthrough of Metroid Fusion. Well, I was pretty creeped out. I'm not gonna lie to you, Paul. I was just like, what the hell is this? This looks like me, and it's way more powerful than me. And oh god, I'm in trouble. So I loved it. I think that the SAX I don't want to say gimmick, but the SAX idea from Fusion is like such a good concept. I love that concept. It's great stuff, and yeah, I was just like freaked out. I was like, oh my god, this thing's gonna rip me in half.
Yeah, I will admit that I definitely don't remember the first time I like saw the SAX, or I definitely remember the feeling of the first time I saw the SAX, right? Like I can definitely remember that, but I don't know if I can specifically remember the moment of it. Other than that, I mean, because I think I was like 9 years old. Like, I'm almost 30 now, so I don't really remember. It was a long time ago. The fact that this game came out so long ago and hasn't been a sequel is bewildering to me. I don't really remember, but I do remember that a lot of the times in these games that if I saw something scary, it would take me a little while to actually finish it. So I know that the first time I saw the SAX, I definitely put it down and was actually scared. I know the first time I had to do like the run, that definitely freaked me out. I vividly remember the feeling of like putting it down. I can't see it in my head, but like I can see the feeling, if that makes sense. Like I can feel it of that moment of like being scared and like putting it down. Like that freaked me out. And a lot of stuff freaked me out as a kid. I was a big scaredy cat in a lot of games. So I'm sure I had the same reaction back then.
Yep. That was scary, man. Like playing that, you didn't expect horror necessarily in Metroid at the
Yeah.
time, so it's definitely creepy. All right, Quaid's next question here is: what if they gave Super Metroid the AM2R/Zero Mission art style? Um, I love the Super Metroid art style. I love like Red Ridley. I think he looks so cool. I think I don't know. I'm really partial to the Super Metroid art style, but I also do love the Zero Mission art style. But I feel like we had that, so like we already had Samus and we already had Ridley and Kraid and Mother Brain in that art style. So I kind of I don't know. I kind of like that Super Metroid is of its own like look, I guess. AN2R is one that kind of jumped out at me because that one doesn't really have Super Metroid's art style or Zero Mission's art style. So it was kind of a look unto itself. I mean, obviously gameplay wise, it looks identical to Super Metroid. So I mean, the image renders are kind of like this cool looking version of Samus that's a recreation of the classic Metroid 2 pose. So yeah, I don't know. AM2R doesn't really fit with either.
Yeah, I don't know about this one because I feel like I wouldn't want to see Super Metroid like too modernized. Like I kind of love how Super Metroid is like blurry and foggy and hazy and has that like it's like just perfectly pure like 80s sci-fi look to it. I don't know, like as much as I really love the Zero Mission art style, and not only just in the game, but like in the cutscenes and like the artwork, like that really bold, shadow heavy art style that Zero Mission has. I love that, and I
Mm-hmm.
would love to see that for like a new Metroid game. Like if they did that style with like Metroid 5, like the Fusion sequel, that'd be awesome. But like for Super Metroid, I think its own thing is fine, and I really love like that original style it had. That I think if you kind of superseded it with like what AM2R has or Zero Mission has, it would kind of lose part of its character. So I think keeping it as it is. I mean, it doesn't even need a remake, right? Like, but that's something that we've discussed over the past couple of weeks and even on Twitter too, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I would like it to keep its original style or have something close to that. So that's how I would deal with it.
Yeah, and to be clear, I was literally just talking about the like character art and stuff like that. Not necessarily sprite work because I think that the sprite work in all three of those games looks awesome. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I love that they all kind of have their own thing going on. Like really, each game almost has its own unique art style. I guess except for like the Prime trilogy, which is kind of one in of itself. But I like that about Metroid. All right, let's keep it going here. 10 asks a very interesting question that I had never really thought about. But his question is: do you consider Donkey Kong 64 a Metroidvania? So you know what? My initial answer here was like, no, it's a 3D platformer, just like Super Mario 64 or Banjo Kazooie. But I will say that there is some argument to be made here because you do need to go and you get all. First of all, you get all of the different Kongs, and then you get all of their different like guns, and then you get all of their different special abilities, and you are traversing back to all of the different worlds to finish up and get golden bananas a lot of the time. So I could see an argument being made that it was.
I did not think that this was going to be a question we would get. First of all, I love Donkey Kong 64. It is a game near and dear and close to my heart. It is one of my favorite N64 games, one of my favorite games growing up as a kid. Would I consider it a Metroidvania? Well, going back to the point we were talking about earlier, where like, Metroidvanias, we think of that as a game where you have part of an area unlocked and you can walk, move through it, but you got to come back because some parts of that area are not accessible until later when you have the right equipment or whatever. In Donkey Kong 64, that's somewhat true, but also not true at the same time, and it's not really true in the same kind of way. Like, I wouldn't say Donkey Kong 64 is the same kind of backtracking. Like, you go to one area, you complete the area, then you go to the next area, you complete that area. You can go back for golden bananas, but you don't have to. And a lot of the time, you can get all those. That's the difference. You can get all those a lot. Some of the time, you can get like a sufficient amount of golden bananas without ever having to go back to previous areas. And when you are, even though you are unlocking other characters and other weapons and whatnot, they're not really opening up the area like too much more. I would say the only exception to that is when you get like different weapon ammo kinds and those like open new doors. But like it doesn't have the same kind of like depth, I would say. But yeah, I don't know. I think I would have to think more in depth, more critically about that. That might take a whole episode. That might take an essay on whether or not DK64 is a Metroidvania. I really don't know. That's a good question because it's like, what is the threshold? Like, how much backtracking? What kind of backtracking? How do the upgrades open up the world? Like, that's something that like there's a line and a threshold of like how much of that makes it a Metroidvania or not. Because I think many games have those kind of elements, but does that necessarily make them a Metroidvania? No. So that's a really good question. I'm honestly right now I don't know. I would say that it would be unfair for me to give a yes or no answer here because I don't know enough. I haven't thought about it critically enough to give an educated and scientifically reasonable answer. I'm gonna have to give back to you on that one, man. That's or whoever that is. That's a question. That's a real stumper right there. I don't know. It might be.
It's something that you want to say no right away, but then when you think about it, I could see someone saying yes, and I don't know if I would say yes necessarily because I do agree with you. Like, you can go back if you're 100% completing this game. You could probably call it a Metroidvania, but you don't have to do that. You only need. But at the
same time, though, I'm thinking of parts of the game where, like, yeah, but at the same time, you do go to some areas and you can't unlock them just yet. But it's not like in Metroid Prime where like you're walking through Chozo Ruins and then you go and you can't access parts of that area, or like Fendrana Drifts. And then you go to other areas, then you come back and unlock more of it. Usually in Donkey Kong 64, what I remember is like you go to a certain level, parts of that level aren't accessible to you, but you end up unlocking that accessibility in that same level, right? Like you don't have to go to another area of the game. Like
not always. Like you have to go back to the first couple levels with like Tiny and Lanky and Chunky.
Yeah,
afterwards.
That is true. Yeah, I guess you do kind of have to go back to like, at least the first like Jungle Japes and Aztec. Angry Aztec, yeah, you do.
Yeah,
I think this might call for an Inspired by Metroid episode, Andy. I think that might be our next.
That. I love Donkey Kong 64.
I would very 100% play this for Inspired by Metroid. So, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I'm down for that.
All right.
Great question. All right, let's keep it going. HKH 2003 asks, "What if?" And this is a great question. What if, despite all the effort put into Metroid Prime 4, it still doesn't sell particularly well? What would that mean for the franchise? Oof. So I guess let's come up with just a number, that arbitrary number that it has to sell in order to be considered a success. Let's just say, I think that number is 3 million copies. What say you?
Well, to be a success,
and I'm basing that
Switch,
not on a lot of research or anything. Just that's the number that comes to me when I'm thinking of it.
Yeah, I think 3 million is a good number. I honestly think it can sell more than that, but I'm trying to be like, reasonable. I mean, there are a lot of good games on Switch that haven't sold 3 million, and they are on Switch, right?
Right. Well, I'm just saying, like, it has to sell at least 3 million to be considered a success, to make up the costs of like the restarting, the development, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I would say it would have to be at least 3 million to sell. Like I would say selling particular well. I mean, if it does, it has to at least crack 1 million. I would say 2-3 million is probably a given at this point. Like it's
Yeah.
on the Switch. I feel like it has to just sell well regardless. But what would that mean for the franchise? I don't know. I think the franchise would be done if Metroid Prime 4 doesn't sell well. I don't know if we'll ever see another Metroid game again. I don't know.
That's like a doomsday scenario. Like that's the clock is at midnight in that scenario. I and the unfortunate thing is the longer that Nintendo waits to release it, the less momentum the Switch is going to have. Like all the games that came out in 2017, 2018, 2019 sold like crazy. But I mean, I guess they're still selling like crazy because Age of Calamity just reported that it sold about 4 million copies. And granted that's Zelda, but it's still kind of like a spin-off. So I think that in my heart, I think that Metroid Prime 4 can sell 3 million copies on the Nintendo Switch. Man, if it doesn't though, that would be pretty brutal. And I could see, you know what? Maybe I could see them just being like, okay, well, people don't like the Prime style. We're just going to make 2D Metroids. Maybe, and that's like one of the better case scenarios. So I could,
Well,
I
I mean,
could
depends on who
maybe
you
see
ask.
that.
It depends on who you ask, because I
Well,
mean, if we're gonna pick, I'd rather them just keep making 3D Metroids. And to be honest,
well, but best case scenario in like the fact of like they keep making Metroid games at all
right,
is
okay,
more
yeah,
so what
I
I
see what you're
mean.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking, but like the 3 million number, that's what I would love for it to hit. But at the same time, like I'm looking at the Switch sales numbers right now, and like if it doesn't hit 3 million, like I still can't say it wouldn't be a success. Because I'm looking at a couple of these games. Fire Emblem Three Houses. How much do you think that game sold? Fire Emblem Three Houses was I would say a pretty popular game. Like that game was talked about a lot, and it seemed like a lot of people bought the game and have played the game a ton. Okay, um, as of March 2020, so that was still a year ago, but as of March 2020, the game only sold less than 3 million units on the Switch. But like, would you
Right.
consider Fire Emblem Three Houses an unsuccessful game? No, I wouldn't. I mean, that game was super popular. A ton of people bought it, and like, it's continued to contribute to like the Fire Emblem renaissance, so to speak. That game probably as of 2021 has sold more than that, but like it hasn't sold 30 million, copies. It hasn't sold, um, 20 or 10 million copies. But I would still consider it a success, right? I think as of 2021 or 2020, it did actually sell over 3 million copies. But still, like, let's say it didn't, and it's stuck at 3 million sales. Like, I wouldn't say that it was an unsuccessful game either, though. So on one hand, I think it should definitely sell multi-million. I would love for that to happen, and it really should. But at the same time, it's like sales wise, up 2-3 million for Metroid Prime would still be really good overall. And I think that's maybe we shouldn't set our expectations too high. I don't know, because I'm looking at some of these Switch sales, and not every game is selling 20-30 million.
Right. I guess my worry is like, and again, just picking maybe 2.5 million is a more rounded number, but let's just stick with 3 for a second, because I'm like, all right, well, we also did have to like completely restart this, so there's probably some, I mean, not probably, there's definitely some extra costs that go in with
True.
that, so it's gonna have to make up that, by selling fairly well. But yeah, I don't know. um I don't know. I think that would be awful if it did not, if it wasn't
Yeah.
a success. But I mean, Nintendo's got to step up to the plate too, and make sure that it is a success by promoting it and investing in it. Like you can't do another Samus Returns where you make this game and then it doesn't sell, but it doesn't sell because you didn't promote it. So
It's so
you
annoying
can't do that.
when I see people post about Samus Returns, like, oh, Metroid fans didn't buy this, bro. Nintendo didn't even promote Samus Returns in the E3 Direct that year. They promoted Metroid Prime 4, which wasn't even in like development at the time at that E3, and they saved Samus Returns for the Treehouse showing after that Direct. They never gave the game a chance. They showed commercials for it, I think maybe the week before the game launched. That was it. like a TV spot or two and a couple internet ads, banner ads, that's it. And then people are like, oh, why didn't people buy the game? There's a reason why advertising exists. If people just naturally bought products all the time based on their quality, then there would be no need for advertising. But that's why advertising exists, to get more people to play the games. And when people say, oh, people didn't play Samus Returns, why don't they make more Metroid games? They don't buy them, and that's why I don't make them. Because they didn't ever give the games a chance. So I would really hope that because the game's going to be on the Switch, that they're going to look at it as not just a Metroid game, but a Switch game. And therefore, they're going to promote the hell out of it, and it should pop off. I really have high hopes that it will, because, I mean, it's on the Switch, but at the same time, you know, Metroid Prime is right now the best-selling Metroid game, I think. I mean, I don't know if that includes digital sales and, like, maybe recent sales for Super Metroid on the Switch. But, like, Metroid Prime sold, like, just under 3 million copies on the GameCube, which had, like, the lowest install base for, like, a Nintendo console ever, and, like, one of the lowest, like, install bases for any video game console. And that's the best-selling Metroid game. So I'd have to think that on the Switch, which is, like, the
best... And that's because it was promoted.
That's the thing, too. It was promoted a lot. I really hope this game's promoted. It's going to be on the Switch, but at the same time, I'm really worried because Nintendo, for some reason, loves to release Metroid Prime games around the time Halo games come out. And it just so happens that Halo Infinite was also delayed and might come out around the same time Metroid Prime 4 comes out, if that also comes out this year, which it could. I don't think it will, but it could. They could easily say it comes out later this year and then have it released around the same time as Halo Infinite and, again, screw the game's marketing up. But I hope that's not the case.
So I actually, maybe I'm just being a Nintendo homer here or overly optimistic, but I think that because development restarted and because they need to make up those costs, like, Nintendo has to market this to make up that money. You know what I mean? Like, they have to, or else it's just like you're literally just flushing that money down the toilet. So, yeah, I think that, listen, if they invested $10 million into advertising, and I have no idea what is a big number for advertising or not. Maybe 10 million is like small potatoes, but, like, I don't know, 10 million bucks into advertising. I just did some quick math, divide that by 60. That is, and 60 is the price of a game. So they need to sell like 170,000 copies to do, you know, to make up that 10 million. So I think they have to, or else, you know, they're just flushing it all away.
I think they will. I mean, if the fact that they restarted development, they could have easily not restart development and just let it go as it was going. I really think that they're gonna they're gonna put some effort into advertising this. Like
I do too.
I have to believe that, because why would they even go through the effort of making another Metroid Prime, not only a Metroid Prime game, but Metroid Prime 4, like, over a decade later? Like, why even go through the effort to do that if you're not going to pull out all the stops? So I have to think that they're going to. But, you know, Nintendo somehow finds a way to surprise me in all kinds of ways. So who knows how it's going to go.
Okay, so we still got a bunch of questions left here, but we're running long here. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick one from Noodles. We're going to pick one from Big Griff, the Accursed Hunter. And then we're going to get to the rest of your questions either next week or on a later show here. So we're going to try and do them all eventually here, but we're only picking a few for now. So let's get going here, and let's go and let's ask a question from Noodles. This is a great question. If Nintendo did the right thing and declared Other M non-canon in its entirety, I knew you'd love that, and the story of Adam was revisited, what would you like it to be like? With Other M non-canon, just about anything is possible because of how little Fusion tells us. P.S. I know you want Chief in Smash, but I personally want Gordon Freeman if we got a first-person shooter character. Let's talk about Gordon Freeman for a second here.
Very based pick there. That is a tasteful pick. That's not a character that the Zoomers out there will appreciate, but Gordon Freeman would be really cool in Smash. I think he'd be an underappreciated pick. You know, obviously, I really want Master Chief in Smash, and, you know, like Doomslayer, Doom Guy would be really cool. But Gordon Freeman, you know, that with the crowbar, I'd be about that. That'd be cool. That'd be really cool.
You know, I've never played Half-Life, and I heard that they're fantastic.
You've never played Half-Life?
I never have.
Man?
I never have.
You got
no. I think that if Gordon Freeman was the character, that would be a fart in church. I think that Nintendo fans would just be like, "What?
Oh
Who?"
yeah, it would definitely go over very lukewarmly for most
Yeah.
people, but for everyone 30 and over, I think that would go over for a lot of PC gamers out there. It would be really
It
cool.
would be huge for the PC gamers for sure. Like even for me, like I would be like, okay, like that's cool. That's not for me, but I think Chief would be cool in Smash.
Yeah.
Man, I predicted Chief in Smash in like 2018. I was calling for that, and I was like, that's gonna be the big reveal, and it still hasn't happened. But I think it still could.
I think it's
But
very likely. I mean, right now we know that there's a big relationship between Nintendo and Microsoft right now. They have two game. There's so many things pointing to them getting Master Chief in Smash. Number one, they have two characters in the game already, so they already have an established way to get characters in the game. Minecraft and Banjo Kazooie. Obviously, they're gonna want Halo in Smash. That's their baby, right? That's their Mario. Like they're gonna want Halo. They're gonna want Master Chief in Smash. Second of all, we know that there's Master Chief is technically on Switch and technically because of Fortnite. They've been showing off a bunch of like Nintendo Switch stuff in recent Xbox showings, and like they've been teasing like the Switch appearing in the background. There's rumors that like the Ultimate and like the Game Pass and Xbox Live Gold potentially might come to Nintendo Switch. So like all of that stuff points to Chief coming to Smash. I know that's not really the question we're answering here, but I really think he's going to be in the game. I think he might even be revealed at E3. I really hope. I got Ridley. Ridley is in Smash. We can get Chief. We can get them both. We can get them both.
yeah, I don't think it's impossible. That would definitely go over better than Gordon Freeman. I respect your pick for Gordon, but yeah, that would be that would have more downvotes than upvotes, I think.
But let's. So the actual question though. So the question.
Yeah, let's get to the question.
Was so okay. So let's say Other M is non-canon. Great. There we go. What would you like the story of Adam? Like, how would you like it to be revisited? So I'll let you go first on this one because I feel like I've gone first on a lot.
I wouldn't. I don't care about Adam. I'm sorry. I didn't like him in Fusion. I didn't like him in Other M. Uh, let's just say this. Maybe the only way that I would ever want to see Adam back in Metroid is if they did like a Metroid prequel or something set, I don't know, before Samus was like a big, even that, now that I'm saying it, I don't really want that. I don't care about Adam. I think if you're going to tell Samus's origins, there's cooler ways that you could do it. Yeah, I wouldn't. I think that he was kind of goofy in Fusion, as I talked about last week. I think he was horrible in Other M. So take out Other M, and I think he's still kind of goofy in Fusion. I hope he doesn't come back in Metroid 5. I'm sure he probably will in some fashion, but I hope he doesn't. And I wouldn't want to see him again. So there you go.
I'm definitely on the us box robot fans are also big Adam fans. I don't know what the Adam fan word is, but I'm a Fusion Adam fan. I like him in Fusion or the Adam computer, whatever you add the Adam AI. And I mean he's almost guaranteed to come back in the Fusion sequel. Like that's the only other other active character we know of than Samus and the animals she has stowed away on her ship. But I don't think there needs to be any revisiting of his story. I think what Fusion did was fine. That's one of the reasons why I hated that Other M had to, like felt the need to explain stuff. Like some stuff is fine to be left up to the imagination. That's a good part of storytelling. Not everything has to be explained. And Fusion did it fine, where Adam is a former CO of Samus who died somehow on a mission or whatever it is. And now an AI based on his consciousness exists, and Samus is working with it. I'm more interested in the character development and the relationship between Samus and that AI than I am of the person in the past, because I don't really care, but not in the same reason you don't care. Is that I do care about Adam as a character, but I don't need his backstory explained. I already have sufficient information, and I don't need every hole to be filled up with details, like Other M felt the need to do. He died in the past. That had an influence on Samus's relationship with them. Obviously, a person. The one thing I like about the AI is that it's like a person coming back to life. That Samus, like in a different way than the Ridley relationship, where like this was a person that was very near and dear to Samus, had a very obvious impact on her life, and now has kind of come back to life, but not really. And that like is a really that's a huge thing. That's a big dynamic. I don't know how I would deal with that as a person. Um, that's what I always loved about that part of the fusion story. And Other M just like ruins it in so many ways that we've discussed. We did a whole episode on it, but I don't think there needs to be an explanation. There doesn't need to be a revisiting. I want to see the progression of that character, the progression of the story, and the progression of the relationship between the Adam AI and Samus in the future. The backstory is what it is. Adam died. They poured his brain into a robot body. That's it. I think that's fine. And I don't have any problem with that, especially, C-Lab fans out there. That's like the first episode, by the way. And that's a great meme. But like I like that. I think that's fine. That's sci-fi, that's whatever. Whether you believe in that or you can like suspend your disbelief for that, like whatever. I like the crux, the basic story of that. I don't think there needs to be any prequeling or explanationing about it. Give me just character development in the future, not backstory in the past.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, well, this is our last question. This is from Griffin, the Accursed Hunter, and this kind of ties in to the same thing that we're talking about here. He asks, the time period where Samus makes a name for herself as a bounty hunter after leaving the military, but before the first Metroid game. If this time period was to be explored/explained, how Samus was known to become the best bounty hunter in the galaxy, what would be the best way to do it, and what would you like to see? So, my answer is kind of the same. Not that I don't care, but I don't think that we need to see it. I feel like it's okay to just accept the fact that Samus is this great bounty hunter.
That's what I'm saying.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, yeah. No, go on.
To answer this question, if we had to explore this time period, if we had to and we had to do it, I think like make a game of it or something, right? Where like you could almost have like an RPG or something more similar. Ooh. Where like you're Samus. I'm thinking like kind of Mass Effect 2 almost here, where like you're Samus and you can go and choose these little mini missions and you can hunt down different bounties, and like that could be your game. Like maybe there's one bounty that's kind of like the crux and the overall story arc of the game, and like you finally slay him at the end. But like make a game of just like little like missions, kind of like Mass Effect 2, where Samus hunts down different bounties and she can take them out that way. Again, I don't really think that this needs to be explored/explained, but if we're going to do that, I think that could be cool. I've always been a big fan of like, we're told that Samus is a bounty hunter, but we never really see her hunting bounties. So I think it would be cool to add that into like a game, like some side content where Samus is hunting stuff or monsters or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I think that you could probably make a full-fledged game out of it if you had to explore that time period. What do you think?
Well, I kind of wish you picked a different question, because we already kind of did a prequel question here. But yeah, I'm with you on like the story. Like I don't really need that part of her time explained, because like Samus is the best bounty hunter. I know that because I play the Metroid games and I have evidence right there. I don't really need to be told that again. But if we are going back in the past, I think like we talked about earlier, like the third person, like Star Wars or Tomb Raider style game, just do that. Like have that kind of game, but then work like the bounty hunter system into it. I mean, really, Samus isn't really a bounty hunter. Like this game would essentially be making that part of her character up, because like Nintendo just calls her that for some reason, but she's really not a bounty hunter. She's just like a soldier essentially, or a conscripted like mercenary most of the time. To have a game where she is actually a bounty hunter would be cool, but I think it would probably be like a more open world, like I think it would be great. It would be cool. Like it would work well in the Metroid I don't know, theme and aesthetic, where maybe you can just fly to whatever planet you want and take like whatever bounty and just kind of like flying around in space by yourself, kind of like in a No Man's Sky kind of way.
Could be cool.
And you just go off on bounties and missions and do that. And maybe there's like a story weaved in there. That'd be really cool. That I'm more interested in that kind of game than I am in a story or a game about her time in the academy or whatever. That part of her story I'm even less interested in. But this I think would be cool, because at least it would back up the bounty hunter part of her story, but it could also be a good way to work in that kind of more open world, third person-y style type of game that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, 100%. I don't want to see anything set in the academy or any of that junk. I don't want Adam to come back. If this game started with Samus in her ship, and like you had like 40 missions available or something like that, and like they were ranked in difficulty, and you could start off with some, and maybe when you complete some missions, other ones unlock or whatever. I think that could be neat, and like hunting bounties that way. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not something I'm exactly clamoring for. I think that could probably just be side content in like a regular Metroid game. Like they could add areas where like there's a special boss or special monster, and you could go and hunt the bounties there. But yeah, I don't know. I think that could be kind of neat if they did that.
It'd be cool because we're talking about like, okay, maybe she's taking down big monsters, or whatever. But I think maybe it would be maybe like a reverse SAX kind of thing where Samus is going around hunting individuals and you're just chasing people down. It'd be cool. Like that might be a cool gimmick where you have to just literally hunt down individuals as they like go from planet to planet or try to evade you and try to lose you in systems and whatnot. You just got to hunt them down as hard as you can and finally catch them and then drag them back or kill them. That would be really interesting because I think, like going to a planet and then like looking for big monsters and killing them, that's cool. But I don't think that would be as engaging as something a little more intense as like Samus literally hunting people down across star systems. That would make for a really intense game. That I would be interested in. I would love that for that kind of game, and rather than just like a more generic like side questy game. But if it was more like a
you'd want to be hunting like people, for sure. If and, like, build stories out of that.
Yeah, if it was like a Shadow of the Colossus, but instead of like big 8 bosses, it was like 8 people you hunted down over the course of the game and tried to take them out. That'd be cool. I'd be down for that.
Yeah, my idea, and I don't know if you played them, but like in Mass Effect 2, you can kind of take these little missions, and it always seemed kind of cool to me because they were like self-contained little stories. So if they had to do that, I think that would be cool. Yeah. All right, well we actually still have a bunch of questions here to answer, but we're running long. But we are definitely going to get to them, if not next week, then some point in the future here. And you know what? We probably have room for a few more. So if you do want to get some questions in, make sure to ask us over on our Discord server in the Ask Us Anything channel, and we'll get you on the show, by God, and we'll get to your question eventually here. Dak, I had a great time doing this show. I love these Q&A episodes. Some really good stuff here.
Yeah, and now we have a blessed but cursed problem of having too many questions, which is great to see, but it also, I would love to sit here for hours and hours and just answer all of these questions, but I don't think that's the plan. So I think it's more than fair that we just stick to around an hour or so, but I love that we have too many questions to answer. It sucks that we can't get to all of them, especially for those of you who answered a bunch of questions, but that's kind of the nature of the beast, so to speak, but rest assured that they're not going to be forgotten. We're going to answer these, in the future, probably like you said, Nick, in the next episode, coming episode, and get to them, because these are, I mean, a lot of the time some of these questions are worth a full episode, right? Like, is Donkey Kong 64 a Metroidvania? That's a whole episode right there. That's a whole few episodes, that could go the distance. You never know. So please keep sending us your questions. We love to answer them. I could sit here and I could we went back and talked about like why or how do we meet and what gave you the idea to do the podcast or whatever. And when I saw you post about this and I want to do the podcast, that's the kind of thing I could just sit here and talk about Metroid for hours. And I never had an outlet to do that other than, Twitter or social media or whatever until now and had this show. So I love just sitting down and talking about these questions. I love this kind of stuff. So I really appreciate y'all coming through, joining us on Discord, even just listening to the show and providing us some awesome questions because we love talking about them.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you once again to everyone. Special shout out to Griffin here. We'll get to you, brother. Don't worry.
Yes.
We'll get to you. But for now, we're gonna call it quits for this week's episode. We want to thank you guys for listening, and of course, let you know that you can follow us over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod. I am at Spiteri316, and Dak is at DakCity_. Check us out over in Discord. We have a great little community going on there. We'd love to have some of you passionate Metroid fans in there talking and asking questions with us, so come and check us out. And of course, go and subscribe over on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Go and like and subscribe. That is it. That is all. Thank you guys for your questions, and we will see you all here next week.